Today we're going to be focusing on rounding decimals. So we've already practiced earlier, several weeks ago, on rounding whole numbers. The rule is the same. So the thing that you need to know is that in order to round, you need to underline the place that you are rounding, and then you circle the neighbor next door to the right. Today we're going to call it the judge. And that judge determines what happens to the place that you are rounding, whether it goes up or if it stays the same. Okay, with whole numbers, we typically round up or leave it the same, and then put zeros after the place that we rounded. Today is a little different. That's about the only change. It's actually a little bit easier. So before we do, we're going to start by looking at a number line. Sometimes drawing a number line is the easiest way to round numbers. Okay, if I'm rounding, I'm able to see one place on the number line, what it's closer to. So if I'm looking at a whole number, say for example, you don't have to draw this, I'm just going to sketch one out. Say for example, I have 1 here and 2 here. And in the middle, I have 1 1/2. I have 1 3/4. And then I have 1 1/4. So if I said, I want to round 1 3/4 to the nearest whole number, looking at it on a number line, you're able to visualize it a little bit easier because you can see that it's closer to which whole number. 1 3/4 is closer to which whole number? 2. So sometimes the number line is really helpful. So that's why we're going to start with that today. Okay, we're going to start by filling in our missing numbers. So on the top row of our hundredths number line, you'll see that I have all of my mixed numbers are going to go up here. My decimal representation will go down here. So if I write, you write, we're going to start with the very first one. 2 56/100 is written with the big 2, 56 over 100. Then it gives me 2 58/100 on the top. What is the decimal form of that? Yes.
2 and 58.
2
and 58.
0.58 is what the decimal is going to look like. You read them both the same. You read them 2 and 58/100, but they look different. Okay, if I move over, I have 2.61. That reads 2 and 61/100. What is the equivalent fraction for that? What's it going to look like?
2
Very good.
61/100.
Okay, the next one I don't have anything, but I can see that I have a pattern. So here I had 56/100. In between, that would be 2 and 57/100, 2 and 58/100, 2 and 59/100, 2 and 60/100, 2 and 61/100. Y'all following along with my little dot up there? 2 and 62/100, 2 and 63/100, 2 and 64/100. So 2.64, and then a big 2 with a 64 over 100 for my mixed number. And then I've got the decimal for the last one, but the fraction is going to look like this. Okay, that's our hundredths number line. The thousandths, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to start with the one that I'm given. So I'm going to have 2 and 993 over 1,000 this time. The next one is 2, 994 over 1,000. How do I write 2 and 996 as a decimal? What's it going to look like?
What did you say?
How do I write this number as a decimal?
So you point 2.996. Did I do it?
Yes, y'all both did. Very good. You told me 0.99. You told me exactly how to write it. You just read it to me. Both are correct. All right, then I have 2 and 998 thousandths. The next one over is on top. That's going to be 2 and, oops, no decimal, 999 over 1,000, which means the next one, if I have 1,000 1,000ths, that's equal to
3.
1 whole, and I have to add that to 2, so it's just 3. Very good. Okay, well, at the very beginning of that, I've got 2 boxes, so I've got to figure out what that is. So if this last one that I labeled was 2 and 993 thousandths, that means the one before is 2 and 992 thousandths, 2 and 991, so 2 and 990. And as a decimal, it's 2.990. Okay. There are steps for rounding decimals, just like there are steps for rounding whole numbers. It's wanting me to round this number here. Can somebody raise your hand and read that? How do I read that number? Bryn.
45 and 621,000.
Beautiful. Perfect. Okay. For rounding decimals, step 1, we are going to underline the place that we are rounding. It's wanting me to round to the nearest hundredths, so I'm going to underline the hundredths place. Which digit is in the hundredths place?
This is the 2.
The 2, so I'm going to underline it. The next thing I do is I circle what we call the judge. The judge is going to determine what happens to the number 2. So the judge is to the right. It's a 1. Okay, then we have to apply our rounding rule. Well, we know that if a number is less than 5, number stays the same. So this number is less than 5, so that means that the number we underlined, the one that we're rounding, will stay the same. It's not going to change. It's going to remain a 2. We're going to mark this part out because we actually aren't going to put zeros. That's if we were to round whole numbers. When we round decimals, we drop or leave off all digits after the place. And what I mean by that is the place that we've underlined, the digit that we are rounding, we're going to drop all digits after that, meaning we drop the judge and anything after the judge. We don't even include it. They're gone, long gone. Sayonara, hasta luego.
So they went to Australia?
Bye. Yep, they're not coming back. Okay, so what that's going to look like when you actually round this number. I have a 2 in my hundredths place. My judge is less than 5, so the 2 will stay the same. So my number is just going to look like this, 45 and 62 hundredths. Here's a tip. If it says round to the nearest hundredths place, the last digit should be in the hundredths place. You shouldn't have any more digits after that. Okay, we're going to practice rounding several numbers off to the side, and then we're going to recall our information from the last 2 days of ordering decimals. So we're going to round them first, then we're going to order them. So looking at this section right here, I'm going to zoom in so that it's a little bit bigger and easier to see. Okay. 1 and 612 thousandths. We are rounding to the nearest hundredth for all of these. So I'm going to underline all of my hundredths digits because that is the place that I want to round. Then I'm going to look at the judge. Which direction is the judge always going to be? To the right or to the left? To the right. So I'm going to circle my judge. And that's going to determine what happens to the 1. Since it's less than 5, is the 1 going to stay the same or is it going to change? It's going to stay the same. So this number is going to be 1 and 61 hundredths.
Wait, and why did the 2 draw?
Because he went to Australia, remember? You don't put zeros. When you're rounding to the hundredths, the last digit should be in the hundredths place. All the other digits get dropped off. If I put a 0 there, the way it's the same value, but then I read it 1 and 610 thousandths, and I want to read it with hundredths. So we don't need to put zeros. I could put a million zeros at the end of a decimal. It doesn't change how much it's worth. It just changes how I say it. That's why we drop them. Okay. All right, the next one, 2 is less than 5. So this number is just going to remain a 5. So it's going to be 25 hundredths. Circle the judge in the next number, which is 3. 3 is less than 5. What happens to the 0, the digit that I'm rounding? Stays the same. So it's just going to be 40 hundredths. Okay, what happens if I don't have a judge to circle? What's special about decimal numbers? I have somebody called something the hero. 0 the hero. Okay, so if it's 0 to the right of 5, that means that the 5 is just going to stay the same. So this is just going to remain as is. What would the next one be?
157.
Yep, 1 and 37 hundredths. That doesn't change either because of 0 the hero. Same with the next one. This one's just going to stay the same.
It's going to be 330,000.
And if I were to plug in 30 the heroes here, it's not going to really affect it at all. That's just going to remain 2. I could go ahead and put 2 zeros to write it to the hundredths place. Kind of makes it look like money. Makes it a little easier to compare. Okay, now I'm going to label least to greatest. So I'm going to switch colors here.
25 Zoe.
And I'm going to start by looking at my whole number column. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and plug in some zeros in some of these places just so it's easier to see. And think of it like money. What is my smallest amount that I have? 0, and then looking at the hundredths or the decimal numbers, 25. If I think of money, it's like 25 cents. That's the smallest amount. So this one's going to go first. So I'm going to list that over here. My original number is 252 thousandths. I want to list the original number and then mark it out. The next smallest number is going to be what?
30.
Yes, perfect. 3,300. So I'm going to write it just like how it was originally, which is 0.33. My next smallest number, 403 thousandths, because it's this one right here. So this is the one I'm listing next, but I want to list my original number. That's why it's 403 thousandths. Okay, I've got 4 numbers left. 3 of them start with 1. Think about money again. What is my smallest amount? What's going to go first? Oops. 135. So this one's going to go next, and it is 1.35. Then which one? 1 and 37 hundredths.
And then it's going to go
161
hundredths.
Remember the original. It's 1 and 612 thousandths. That's the number I want to write, my original number. And then last but not least is 2. Okay. I want you in your table to do 1, 2, and 3 on the next page. If you need to write out your number really big so that you can underline and circle the judge, I want you underlining and circling the judge every single time. If you don't need to write it out, if you can do it right here on your paper, just underline the digit you're rounding, circle the judge to the right. Y'all talk about them. We'll check them in a second. Okay, on number 1, I put my number. I wrote it a little bit bigger so y'all can see it better. I underlined the digit in the hundredths place, and I circled the judge to the right. Because my judge is greater than 5, it's 5 or more, that means that 8 has to go up to what digit? It goes up 1 to 9. So the 8 becomes a 9, and this is my answer because I'm rounding to the hundredths place. Listen, it's rounding to the hundredths place. What was the tip that I told you to remember? If you're rounding to the hundredths, there should only be, the last digit should be in the hundredths place. You should not have 1 digit or 3 digits. It should say, when you read the number, it should say 1 and 39 hundredths if it's rounded to the hundredths, okay? So knowing that, looking at number 2, the tenths place is the digit 2. My judge is 1, it's less than 5. Is the 2 going to stay the same, or is it going to go up 1 digit? It's going to stay the same. So my answer should be B, 7 and 2 tenths. Again, when I read that, it should end, when I'm saying it, it should say tenths at the end if I'm rounding to the tenths place. And then number 3 says Paulina rounds 10 and 569 thousandths to 10 and 57 hundredths. What place value did she round to? Read that number again. 10 and 57 hundredths is what she rounded to. Okay, at your table you have your practice page. I want you to underline the digit you are rounding and circle the judge on every single one. Every single one.